Hey everybody, I'm Carla with Race to Walk, and it is time for another update on Hack the Saga. And today's title of the stream is called How to Survive the Rapture, because we had one supposedly on September 23rd that was supposed to be coming on the Feast of Trumpets. So anyway, that's the title of the stream, and it also led to discovery of a little more sabotage that's related to everything that I've been going through. Same people, same sort of thing, but they're doing it to different people. So anyway, a little bit about kind of the backstory of this. So that's not what I wanted to get to yet. Okay, so back in December of 2023, I realized that there were some things going on, some sketchy sock puppet accounts that were pretending to be Christian influencers, and they were fake. And so I started calling them out, and then I started getting hacked immediately after that. There's a lot of things that happened. The first time I contacted the FBI was in April of 2024, and then I I didn't discover it, but a fellow board member discovered a bootlegged copy of An Unexpected Journal that I was associated with and had been working on for 6 years at the time on Amazon and other platforms. And so we did a little research, reported that to the FBI because that is theft, right? That's a crime. And they wouldn't do anything. They just said report it to IC3. And then in July, I submitted a 200-page report to the FBI, also the Department of Justice, about the things that were happening. And 46 different areas of criminal activity that I could tell that these networks were operating in. And nothing happened. So two things that happened after that. I discovered, just after I had submitted the report, literally the next day, I discovered that everything that I had ever published had been stolen. I didn't know everything at that time, but I realized that some of my work had been stolen. I literally saw my words on New Version of the Bible app staring back at me. It was really surreal. And then also my accounts got completely hacked, everything taken over. It was done through, I'm pretty positive, a corrupted version of Google Play Store because I had reformatted my phone. So I did this live stream. I messaged my stalker. It was 3 hours. It was kind of explaining the whole thing because I had been streaming pretty frequently because I was helping some Afghan Christians and I was given updates about them. And when all this hacking started, I just stopped because I didn't really know what was going on. The Afghans, I had told them, don't send me any personal information because my accounts are compromised. I want to put them in further risk. And so finally, I'm not getting any response from any of the authorities that I'm reporting to. So I just did a live stream about it. The next day, I formatted my phone because I'm hoping that this will get them out of my accounts. And literally, it was like an account takeover. Every single account that I had was taken over and hacked. That was the beginning. So I did this stream, and then you can see here, I think this is number 55. I don't know. Anyway, all these are updates as I'm discovering things. And let me just say that my stuff had been sabotaged. I didn't discover this until way later, but everything they had been stealing from me at least since 2019. My accounts have been heavily sabotaged, especially my site had been heavily sabotaged since 2021. I can tell that by the negative SEO campaigns that started hitting my site with toxic links. I can tell that. But the worst came after I started reporting things to the FBI and they did nothing. Got worse after the first phone call, started hitting heavily after the second, and then it was just all out, attack and sabotage after when they knew that the authorities, the FBI weren't going to do anything. So anyway, that's kind of this story. But along with all this, as I've been going along, it's like I can't really explain it because I don't really understand the mindset of these people who, I'm sorry, I just consider them complete and total losers, that they have nothing better to do than to focus on me and hack me. That's just the dumbest thing. Like, what is your life if that's what you're resorting to? But anyway, as I was going through this, it's just kind of happened to stumble across some local corruption. And so anyway, so that's what's going to be in the stream. This is just an overview of what's going to be covered. I'm going to give you an update on the stolen house, the stolen property in Staten, Oregon. We're going to cover a little brief overview of what's going on and what's current with plagiarism in Christian circles. And then we're going to be talking about, we're going to start getting to the end time stuff. We're going to talk about David Bauer's Guide to the End Times. And then I'm going to be telling you how you can survive the rapture, because there were some concerns about that. Okay, so as I was going through all this, I've been literally dealing with creepy stalkers this entire time. I swear, I just realized that there's this app called Observa. I think they literally might, I don't know if it's that one or another one, but I think they literally must have an app where they just send out a notice to people like, hey, you in this area, go be a creepy stalker and give us information on this. And I think that's what it's going to be. But anyway, as I'm going through this, I had noticed some suspicious public notices in the Kaiser Times. And so anyway, I'm just going to go through and show you which ones. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. If you want to read or listen, these are videos, but I do have summaries of these on the website. If you go into, which one is it? Starting on July 21st, because this was the first day that I went and watched a sheriff's sale. So there's a public notice for two properties. One was in Staten, Oregon. The other one was in Turner. And I go there, and both of the properties are, the sales are postponed, which I suppose it's not totally unusual. But one was only postponed by an hour. And then the two people that came, they, I'm not even joking, staff from the sheriff's department took them into the corner. They moved them from the courthouse steps back into this corner, and then the bidders were hiding behind a column. And it was so suspicious and so weird. I was like, what is going on? And so I went and I started investigating. I have several updates going over that. So if you want to know the whole detail, you can go and watch those, but I'm not going to go over that here. But in the course of this, I'm reporting it. Again, like I reported all the stuff that's been happening to me, the hacking, stalking, identity theft that nobody does anything about. And I was thinking, is it just me? No, it's not just me. It's not just me. It's just like, I honestly don't even know what these law enforcement agencies actually do, because it doesn't seem that they have any concern about crime. So anyway, after that whole suspicious little episode, went into the records department at the Marion County Courthouse, and I looked up the one in Staten. So I think it's very obvious to anybody, but I did sell real estate in Oregon in the 90s, and I have been through real estate school, so I'm not an attorney or a judge, but just basic knowledge about documents and property transfers. It was pretty obvious that there was a lot of sketchy things going on. For example, there was a mention of Washington County rather than Marion County in the loan docs. On the actual signing page, there was just the borrower's name. There were no witnesses on that page. There was no notification on that page. That was the only thing. There were mass parts of the original loan documents that were blacked out. There was I'm not going to get to the whole thing, but there was what was it? It was a certification that was submitted with a supposed notarization that was not a notary seal. I mean, anybody that knows anything about anything like notary seals would know that there are certain things that have to be on there. It was not that. So that was very obvious. There was multiple things that were going on. So then I went across the street to the Marion County Clerk's office, and I looked up the property, different things that happened on that property. And again, it was obvious that there was a lot of shady things going on. The loan that was foreclosed on July 21st, it was either completely fraudulent to begin with, or it had been paid off in 2008. And when it was, because there was a refinance then, and that refinance, it says in the documents that it was transferred free of all liens and encumbrances. So even if that previous loan was valid, which I have doubts that it was, they have no basis for foreclosing on it because there's a title policy on it. That's the whole point. Like, if a title company that's closing the property misses a lien, then they have to make it right. So that was completely, it shouldn't have even happened. So, but there were a lot of other things too. So anyway, after I discovered all this, I went upstairs. So there's a county clerk. So there's Marion County Courthouse is here. Across the street is Marion County Clerk on the second floor of the building. Third floor of the building is Marion County DA. So I literally was like, okay, this is very obvious. This is fraud. Went upstairs to the Marion County DA, and it says that it's like the crime investigation unit. So I'm thinking, okay. And the first person that I talked to, she's like, oh, well, is that civil? I don't know if we do that. And I'm thinking, theft, mortgage fraud is a crime. And then the other person in the office came and she's like, well, first you have to file a report with a police department and then they'll open a case and then we'll investigate it. So you can go to any police department and they can take a report. And so I went out to Staten because I'm thinking, that's the closest they would know the people in the area, right? And the person I spoke to there, I gave her the information, but she didn't take a report because she said it's not a jurisdiction, it's Marion County. So I went to the Kaiser Police because the public notice had been filed or had been published in the Kaiser Times, and there were a lot of other suspicious ones. So to me, what seems obvious to me is that the Kaiser Times is the local paper is being used as a nexus for fraud because it has a very low circulation, right? And so to me, that would make that under the Kaiser Police Department's jurisdiction. I talked to Chief Copeland and he said, well, that's not our jurisdiction, because it's not Marion County. And I'm like, okay. So I had already talked to, it's a civil unit, but I'd already mentioned to the staff more than one time because the other property that had been supposed to be for sale on July 21st kept getting pushed out. And so I would go and ask, hey, what's the deal with this? And so I had mentioned a couple times that property that was sold on Fern Ridge Road in Staten, that was a fraudulent sale. And the first couple times they were like, whatever. And so then the last time somebody came out, I don't know if she's like a manager or what, she's like, well, we just do what the court tells us to do, and it's really not up to us what the court decides. So you have to file something with the court. And I'm like, this isn't civil. This is a freaking crime. And so anyway, she said, you can, if you want to file a report, you can. This is the thing, nobody's ever in the offices. I don't know what the deal with Oregon is, but it gets better. But it's like, you can't ever just like walk in somewhere and report it. Everybody's off working somewhere else. And so when I'm trying to report things and I have jackasses in my phone and interfering with communications, that makes it a little difficult, right? So anyway, she said, you can call one of our officers because they're out in the field. She gave me the card. So I called. And the officer called me back and he was listening. And so he took my number and he went and investigated and called a couple places. And then, people that were involved in this. And then he called me back and he said, well, I talked to the person in our civil unit and they said that she looked it up because you asked about it and it's just all normal. That's just the way things are. And then, he didn't say it that way. I'm just being sarcastic about this. And then he said he talked to the investigator in their department and the investigator told him not to go any further in it and just to drop it. And the investigator said that if I had a problem with it, that I could file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. Because, the Better Business Bureau deals with crimes. And so anyway, what the officer told me, he's like, well, you can, I guess file a complaint with the Attorney General's office. So anyway, again, I try to go in person because of the whole thing with my phones and everything. And so last week, I went into the building where the Oregon Attorney General's office is supposed to be it's off of 12th Street, down by Willamette. It's the same thing. Nobody's there. There's just a guy that's like security. He's like, well, you have to make an appointment. Anyway, I was telling him what I was there for, and he's like, well, you can file a complaint online. So anyway, last Friday, I did. I filed a complaint online with Dan Rayfield's, the Attorney General's office, and I filed a complaint there. And I also, because I had been talking to somebody else, and they suggested that I contact him about all the politically motivated sabotage that I was dealing with, I also contacted him about that. I have not heard back, and if it goes how things normally are, I've called the FBI. I've gone into 2 FBI offices. I've filed complaints with the Department of Justice. I lost track of the number of police departments I've been in. Nothing. So anyway, don't put a lot of hope in this, but here's the thing. I don't know what kind of state this is where there's like no problem just stealing houses. But if it were me, this is what I would do. I would investigate the Marion County District Attorney, because that to me is just like, number one, telling me that any police department can take the report when all these police departments don't seem to think that that's the case. There's a communication problem there, at least. That's at the very least. Besides, like, not even being willing to take the information. That I think is weird. I also would start looking into the Marion County Sheriff's Office, because this is the thing. If the people in that civil unit think that, I mean, I understand that it's the court that's doing this execution, but there's something going on there, because why are they hiding in a corner for this sale? I mean, somebody had to know that there was something sketch about that whole situation. So I would be looking at them too. Also, I probably would be asking that investigator why he didn't think that it was worth his time to even have a case opened about this. And then I would also be looking at the courthouse records department. I don't know how that all works, but when I was looking, so you can go in and you can look up court cases, right? And when I was looking at the Register of Actions, there was a note on, like, it was in 2021. It was in March of 2021. And it said, it was referring to, because this case had been going on since 2020. And there had been multiple public notices filed. And there have been 3 different judges that have been handling this case. And the judge that was assigned to it in March 2021 stipulated that the public notices for that property, for any actions taken on that property, had to be published in the Statesman's Journal, because that is the major newspaper for the area. There had been one published in the Woodburn Independent, which is a larger distribution than Kaiser Times, and she said this isn't valid. It has to be in the Statesman Journal. Now, the one that they did publish in it afterwards, the Statesman Journal, let me tell you, that was one of the ones that looked to me like it was totally fabricated. Not only the way it was published in there, but the affidavit of the publication, the language was weird, and the notarization seal was fake. Okay. So there's that. But the fact that there was a note in the Register of Actions, just when you look at it, but there was no document saying that, that to me would suggest that there's things being deleted or removed, because, I mean, I could have missed it, but that's another thing. And the other place I would start investigating is the Marion County Clerk. And the reason I say that is because it wasn't just the loans that were filed that looked sketchy, but there was this property was originally owned by a man, Daryl Stroshine, who died in 2022. He died in the middle of this while all this drama over his property was going on. And anyway, there was a marriage certificate filed in Marion County that had a date of like the 70s, but it had a records date of 2008. And that to me says there's something not right. The record date should be the same year as the actual action. And I know that when I ordered a copy of my marriage license because when I got married in 1999, I was living in Marion County. I got married in Clackamas County. The copy that I got when I ordered a copy in 2018 had been altered. It said we were married in Marion County. It was not the case. The signatures on that were filling it in was the writing of nobody that was involved. Like, it wasn't my writing, it wasn't my ex-husband's, it wasn't the pastor's. So it was altered. But also last October, when all these weird things that were going on, I really wasn't sure what the purpose was. But I went down and I was looking through the court records to see if anything, court records and the county records, just to see if anything showed up that might give an explanation to what was going on. And I looked at the courthouse records, and I also looked at the Marion County clerks, and I was looking at marriage records. And I remember in October that there were only a handful. There was mine, there's my uncles, my cousins, and I think there was one other. There's like 3 or 4 that came up as Marion County. Because, just because you live in Marion County for a particular amount of time doesn't mean you got married there, right? And so, anyway, most recently when I went back, just like a few weeks ago, I went back and I just was thinking, I'm just going to look again to see what comes up. And there was a whole slew of marriage licenses that weren't there in October. And they also had this sketchy, like, the date of the file number was completely different than the date of the marriage. It was like, it's been changed. There's somebody that's being bribed in that Marion County clerk's office to file false records. I guarantee you that for a fact. So if it were me and I was investigating it, and I was responsible for like investigating crimes, which, there are people who actually get paid to do this. Those are the things that I would do. And I would also ask James C. Edmonds, who was the judge that was over this file since mid-2021, what the hell he was thinking this is the thing, I don't really understand how any person that has any savvy at all about real estate related documents, that they wouldn't see that was fake. I do not understand that. Now, I will say, when he took it over, it was 2021. We're still in the middle of the pandemic. In this article, it says that he was appointed to help fill the backlog. Maybe there was just so much stuff going on that he really didn't look at all the documents. But anyway, I would be asking him questions. Okay, so that's the update on the property. I have taken it as far as I can go. And if this is just a state that it's okay to steal properties and falsify documents, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I personally don't think a bunch of crooks should be able to run free, but I don't know. Police departments, FBI, Marion County District Attorney, Marion County Sheriff's Office, judges, apparently they think different. So whatever. Anyway, moving forward. Okay, so we're going to be talking now about Christian plagiarism because, as I've said, the big thing, I don't even know at this point. I mean, it's just like, I think that, I don't know. I don't even want to speculate on what the motivation is about the people that have stolen from me. But this is a thing. They have stolen from me, and they're known as Christian content creators, right? And they're a bunch of frauds. And so they continue to attack me because they think that if they do that they're not going to get found out. So, I'm just somebody who's writing Bible studies and teaching Bible studies to Afghans in Pakistan. And I'm not going around speaking, and I don't have big book contracts. And so anyway, but this is not uncommon. So this is an article that was published in 2018 in the Religion News. His opinion. It's called The Sin and Crime of Plagiarism in Christian Publishing. And too many authors are parading someone else's creativity as their own, a practice rooted in the cult of Christian celebrity that plagues the North American church. And that's very, very true. This is back in 2018. And so what this was about, it's okay. So not only is it a sin, but it's a literal crime. It's a crime. Okay. So anyway, it starts off with the fact that Christine Kane, who I guess is a big name author, I don't know, I'd never heard of her before. Charlotte Thomason, who was part of this little, circle of whatever, she mentioned her as somebody that she knew and that liked. I'd never heard of her before. I've never watched anything, read anything she's written, never watched her, no clue who she is. But so she was a best-selling author, was accused of lifting content for 2 recent books directly from author Carrie Scott. And then it goes down this whole list of big names that have plagiarized. Mark Driscoll, Tim Clinton, never heard of him either. But anyway, so the thing is, the people that have been hacking me, stealing my stuff, they ghostwrite for big names. Like I said, they ghostwrite for the people in the evangelical industrial complex. And I'm assuming that it's probably a group thing. It's probably not one person putting it together. But anyway, it's lazy. It's a lot easier to go steal words from somebody else than to write them yourself. Now, personally, this is my personal opinion. I can understand when celebrities get ghostwriters because they're actors, right? Or they're celebrities, whatever it is they do. They're not writers. I can understand when business leaders or owners of companies hire a ghostwriter because, again, that's not their thing. Whatever their thing is, that's what they do. They're not necessarily writers. I personally think that if a pastor or somebody who is known as a Christian writer isn't writing their own stuff, that is like so deceptive that the foundation of it is fraud. Just the fact that you're having somebody else write your stuff is fraudulent. It's deceptive. You are known for the thing. It's like somebody expecting to play pro baseball and they've never put on a glove. I mean, that's what the equivalent is. It's just deceptive and it's fraudulent. But a lot of people do this, right? And the people that I know, that's what they're known for, creating content for these people, these that want to be writers but don't actually write. So anyway, as I was researching this, I came across an interview with Carrie Scott on the Julia Roys Report. And I'm assuming that person in the back's got to be Christine Kane. I don't know. I wouldn't even know if I saw her, so I have no idea. But anyway, so I watched this the other day, and she said that, okay, so there are a few things. She said, it was really interesting, because a lot of it sounded very familiar. She said that she had heard about Christine Kane had come out with a new book. It was on like something related to what she wrote a lot about. And so she was really excited about it. And she went and she was reading something. And she said, I felt like it was just like the Holy Spirit highlighting to me to look at these passages. And she's like, it sounded kind of familiar. And so I was going back and I was looking to see what it could have been. She said they lifted like complete passages. And then she called her agent and they went through, and it was a significant amount of stolen work. She said they didn't file a lawsuit to begin with. They contacted her own publisher as well as Christine Kane's publisher. And this is the interesting part. Okay, so she said neither one of them would do anything about it. So I can understand Christine Kane's publisher wanting to push it under the rug. But the fact that Carrie Scott's own publisher just wanted to like let it slide, not do anything, that's pretty telling to me. She also said, Carrie Scott said, I'm assuming she has a team that's working on this, whatever. I'm sure she's right. I'm sure it's a team. And this is what I think, just based on the stuff that I've seen. I have thought this for a while based on all the other stuff that I was seeing, all the sock puppet manipulation, all of that, is that I was thinking, are these the authors that are hiring these PR companies, or is it the publisher? Because for an author to have these fake accounts promoting you, it's not good for you long term, because once those sock puppet accounts don't have activity on your account, basically your account is burned forever. You've lost the engagement. I'm not even going to get into all the other ways that these sketchy agencies basically pilfer the author's real followers for their own purpose. I'm not even going to get into that, but I'm just saying it's not, first of all, writers with, especially with like big publishers, they don't make very much. So I can't imagine that they would have, I mean, some of the bigger ones, I'm sure they can pay for themselves for social media, but it makes sense to me that it would be the publishers. And she said that she basically had to take it to court. And Christine King was pretty dismissive, never acknowledged anything really. And I just have to say that if that's the case, and if it was the publishers like HarperCollins, both of them involved, and if you're not going to do anything about plagiarism, that's really despicable. It's fraud on multiple levels. They're paying these companies that are basically getting paid placement with supposed just independent reviews, all these fake sock puppet accounts. It's very dishonest because if you get any sort of compensation for any kind of promotion, like you get a book off of NetGalley, you have to disclose that you got the book for free in exchange for a review. And if you don't, that's an FTC violation. And so for these publishers, which I'm assuming this is, to engage these agencies, even apart from the fact that they're stealing flipping content from other writers, it's deceptive. It's fraudulent. Fake Amazon reviews, fake reviews on blogs, all this. If you're not disclosing it, that is part of a marketing campaign, it is fraud. It is fraud. So anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting. So anyway, going back to the whole thing with the point of the stream. So what is the deal about the rapture and all this? So we're talking about plagiarism, right? And I've been dealing with, I mean, they still do it. I mean, I've had them hack stuff off my iPad, things that weren't even finished. And they're building these AI models off of, so they could like spit out things that, it's like they have a Carla Alvarez model. They can spit out things I would say, right? Fraud, fraud, fraud. Anyway, going to the topic of this, end times. So, there was this big hoopla at the beginning of the week coming into this weekend to the Feast of Trumpets because somebody had said that Jesus told them the rapture was going to come. All these false prophets, here's the thing. The biblical standard is somebody gives a prophecy that's false and it doesn't come true, they're supposed to be stoned. I mean, if that actually happened, people would be a lot more careful about what they say. Now, first of all, I think that whole thing, again, it was just a made-up marketing campaign. So all these fake accounts have something to babble on about. Pretty positive about that. But regardless, there was a lot of discussion, right? So this is a man named David Bauer. So back when I joined Second Baptist Church back in 2008, or it was actually Christmas 2007, the first class I joined was a class called Exploring the Bible. And the first class I attended was taught by, David Bauer was one of the teachers, and Barry Wilson, who's a pastor at Second, was also a co-teacher. And the very first class I walked into was a class taught by David Bauer called End Time and Current Events. And at the time, I was super into end time prophecy and revelation and all that. So I was like all in it. And David is like an amazing teacher. And not only is he an amazing teacher, but just the class itself, there are just so many awesome people in it. I would go in and they were just so knowledgeable about the Bible. They just read it and they knew it and they lived it. It was just an amazing class. And when I walked in, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to bring my game to this class because it's just such an amazing group of people. But anyway, this series that he taught, End Time and Current Events, we talked about things several times. He taught from 2008 to 2011. And then the irony of the story is he was teaching another series related to this called, I think he titled it the same thing, End Time and Current Events. And he got to the week of Islam as a geopolitical force. It hit the fan. He basically got pushed out by some big money people that didn't like what he had to say. So anyway, he's just a really, really amazing teacher. And That class I really love. So the church as a whole, if you go into a Bible study, they'll always be on the same topic, except that class. They actually got like a dispensation from Ed Young Sr. to not follow the regular curriculum. And every 6 months, they would just pass out a list and say, what do you want to learn about? And anything you wanted to know, they would take it, collect it, see which were the most requested, and then they would develop curriculum about it. So we did classes about different things about the end times, world religions, things like spiritual gifts, evolution, and creationism. One lady wanted to know about dinosaurs. We did the book of Enoch, just all kinds of things, all kinds of things. And so what I realized since that it was really spoke to the strength of both David and Barry, because I recently was in a Bible study where they were trying to do the same thing and it didn't work out well. If you're not normally somebody that would be researching and studying these topics, you can't just wing it, I don't think. And so they're both really amazing teachers. But after David left the church in 2011, after that little kerfuffle about it, he started a blog. And he originally, it was just a WordPress.com blog. He started writing on his blog, and in 2011, he published a series of posts that were basically the same thing that he taught in the class. It was called What Happens Next. Since then, since 2011, whenever I come across somebody that's asking about end time and current events or the end times or the rapture or whatever, I always refer them back to David. That's what I was doing at the beginning of the week. There was all this stuff going around. I'm like, okay, I'm going to share David's series. And I did a search and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the article. I was like, what is going on with this? And so I was looking at the search, and it was very obvious to me that his site had been sabotaged and that his site was being targeted by some negative SEO campaigns, because he's published pretty regularly since 2011. The only things that were coming up, there was one result that was his site, and it wasn't anything that was like one of his main posts. It was something from 2023, and then there was an AI generated block, and then it was just a bunch of rich media in with that. And there were, on the whole first 5 screens, there was only one other result from his site besides that first one. Because of that, and because what I was pretty sure was happening is that, like, he had been, he's published a lot of things, but it's been as a blog, right? And even if the search engines were crawling it and he wasn't being sabotaged, it would be probably kind of difficult to find, because what happens next is not really, for a search engine, isn't really necessarily something about the end times, right? So Monday, I started this page, started working on it, David Bauer's Guide to the End Times. And I just went through, and I had to go through, since he doesn't really have things categorized, I had to go through the archive of his site by month and pull out things that I could tell were related to the end times. So I created this page, and this is his main teaching, his foundational teaching. He has his 4-part series, and he talks about what's going to happen next. There's the next part about, he talks about, he believes in a pre-tribulation rapture and why he believes that's biblically the most solid foundation. And then the third one, he talks about the importance of prophecy, and the next prophetic event would be the Battle of Psalms 83. So people know about the Battle of Armageddon. There's other wars in the end times, and he explains that. And then the last one, it talks about the tribulation and the end time events, like the millennium, the final rebellion, and the great white throne judgment. So anyway, that's at the top of this. So as I'm starting to put this together, I mean, it's just par for the course. I started getting, I could tell things were like, I still have this laptop, but they have the device ID on, and they're blocking me loading David's site. And there were, like, I was at the library, I had a VPN on, but the connection dropped, and then I'm trying to connect again. I'm looking, and somehow they had, I don't know how this works. I'm not a hacker, but they had they were trying to corrupt that page. And it's like, man, you losers. Like, I'm thinking they have got to have stolen this stuff. I was positive about it. So anyway, at the time, his stuff, nothing older was coming up, right? So on Sunday, it was just a couple of 2023 posts were coming up in the search engines. So then I'm working on this. Wednesday, I share a few things. And on Wednesday, when I did a search, what was coming up was David's About page, his LinkedIn profile, and then my page of his teachings, David Bauer's Guide to the End Times. It was showing normally. I'm like, ooh, awesome. Thursday morning, I just do a search, and this is David Bauer End Times. And what comes up is, so still his site, which is good. Well, you would think that, right? It should come up because I'm doing a search on his name. But then do you see this? Not the article, it was an image that was coming up. So this has happened before. They have sabotaged my site multiple times using, I mean, not just this tactic, but they've done it with this multiple times. So go and ask on AI, this is a link, this is what's going on. Can you tell what's happening and how I can counteract it? And so this is a response. And it says, good morning. I can see you're dealing with what appears to be a sophisticated SEO sabotage targeting both you and David Bauer's content. Let me analyze what's happening and provide some actionable solutions. Looking at the URL structure, because I had provided that, I can identify several concerning elements that suggest deliberate manipulation. What's happening? Technical analysis, image hijacking. The URL shows, so it's image name, attachment with a suspicious, so it's session ID parameter. This suggests someone is manipulating how Google indexes and displays your content by forcing image attachments to rank instead of your main page. So the second thing is a session ID injection. And this parameter is likely being used to create unique URLs that confuse search engines about which is a canonical version. Attachment URL manipulation. Attackers are exploiting WordPress attachment page functionality to create competing URLs for the same content. So this is obviously manipulation, right? This isn't just a thing that happens. Okay, and then it goes on how they're likely doing this. Negative SEO campaign using automated tools to create thousands of low quality backlinks posting to your attachment URLs instead of the main page. URL parameter pollution, systematically creating and promoting URLs with various parameters to dilute your page authority. Image spam, uploading and promoting images that rank for your target keywords. Canonical confusion, making search engines unsure which version of your content is the real one. So I've done some things to counteract that. So here's the thing. What is happening is manipulation on a massive scale, creating mass amounts of bogus content to manipulate the search engines, not only to bury the original authors, but to give authority to the fake ones. So look at this. So this was on Wednesday. No, it was Thursday. I did a search in Google. So this is Gemini's description. And it's coming up with this description of who David Bauer is and what he teaches. Well, first of all, they're conflating, the first one they were conflating two real people, David Bauer and some guy that lives in, I can't remember, Atlanta or something. And then a fake persona that had published a book, which I guarantee you is plagiarizing David's stuff. But if you go and look at this, do you see how this is? David's site is listed, and it's basically David Bauer is giving authority to the fake persona that the book plagiarized from him was published under. So this is a book. This is published in 2019. Do you see that ugly cover? Yeah. Supposedly it was published by ARS Press. I don't know. But then the other result, it said it was Christian Faith Publishing had published it. Now, I don't know. I mean, Christian Faith Publishing, it sounds like a sketchy name to me. It sounds like the equivalent of somebody putting the fish on all their signs to say, oh, yeah, I'm a Christian. And then they screw you over in the service. It's, I don't know. Maybe they're valid. I have no idea. But either ARS Press is an imprint of Christian Faith Publishing, or the people who are publishing this plagiarized book are also impersonating Christian Faith Publishing. I don't know. I don't know which one it is. So anyway, so then today I go and I'm doing a search for, so the other one was David Bauer End Times. And just FYI, they hit this, but if you click on any of that now, it will actually go to the page. But on this one for David Bauer and the Rapture, this is what was coming up. Again, you can see it's sabotage. It's an image. And then it gets interesting. So this X profile promoting Greg Laurie, I don't think that is him. I don't think it's David Bauer of Kingwood. Greg Laurie is one of the people promoted by all this network of fake influence, right? And so I don't think that's actually David Bauer. But then look at this one. So this says Thursday, May 2nd, funeral of David Bauer. But when you read the description, what does it say? It's a teaching by David Jeremiah. So this raises the question, who has access to David Jeremiah's YouTube account that could be changing a title of a video to make it seem like it's David Bauer's funeral? What the heck is that? Maybe somebody should be asking questions about David Jeremiah's content team too. Anyway, regardless, there's a lot of manipulation to bury David's stuff, and I will say with a certainty it's because it's been stolen and plagiarized. I don't know this for sure, but what it seems to me is that what's likely is that the people who are stealing the content, right, they're hired to write content, but they don't actually because they're lazy and they're not capable of doing it, I don't think. Anyway, and so they create this content for these big names, but they also use it to their own purpose, like that butt ugly cover that supposedly, I guarantee you, was pulled from David Bauer's stuff, but I think they're also using it for that. And I think what that does is it creates a layer of separation. So the fake account that's plagiarizing the content, as you can see with David's, right, it was burying his actual work. And so it's kind of a separation for there to be connection with their big name person, right, and the actual author, because there's already a layer in between. That's what I think. But I don't know. I just know there's a bunch of shady criminals that nobody seems to. It's like stealing a house. Oh yeah, we don't care about somebody stealing property. We're not going to do anything. And it just seems to me like people who should be concerned about having criminal contractors, it's a crime. It's not just unethical and a sin. It is a literal crime. Don't seem to be concerned. But anyway, going back to David Bauer's Guide to the End Times. If you have any question about the end times at all, I've done my best to collect he has a lot more posts. He doesn't just write about this. He writes about Christian living, Christian marriage. I mean, he's a great person to follow. A great person. But anyway, since I know it's been sabotaged and since it is spread out over literally 14 years, I've consolidated it by category. So you can go here and I have an index at the top. This is what it covers. So what happens next? This is like if you read one thing, this is what you read. 4 articles, and this is like foundational about the end times. The prophetic timeline, he has a ton of posts on this. The feast of the Lord, God's plan, the church age, the rapture, the tribulation, the Antichrist. Oh, wait. Oh, this did not update. Okay. I thought I had updated it. Anyway, I added a couple things. Okay, the Antichrist, the second coming, the resurrection, the final battle, the millennium, the final judgment, and then you have a new earth. So this is a little bit about David. I'm going to link to his bio page, and then I have it separated out by different things. The other thing that I added was just a section on evangelism and the end times. Even if somebody isn't a Christian, they have interest in, obviously they have interest in the rapture. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a whole lame sock puppet campaign created around it, right? And so even though the impetus behind it was fake, the interest in it is real, right? And so if you know somebody that is asking questions about it, be willing to answer it. So here's the thing. We talk a lot about evangelism, but a lot of times people look at evangelism like they're keeping score. If somebody isn't a Christian, you should be looking at them as a project, as a number to mark on your list. Oh, I led this many people to Christ. Just be a friend to them. That was one of the things that at Second Baptist we had a lot of people come in and really good teaching, just general overall. I don't even remember who this was, but there was this one class when they were talking about evangelism and they said, just be a friend. And I was like, I can do that. I can be a friend. Just be willing to answer people's questions. And this is the thing, it's not a contest, right? Not only is it not, we don't mark numbers, but it's not like, okay, if you can win in a debate this many questions, then this person's going to become a Christian. That's not how it works. What our job as a Christian is to be a witness as our life, right? Not necessarily our words, but just how we live. That's what it's about. There was this one person, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but there was one person in my Bible study, and she said, I got into a conversation with somebody, and he had all these questions. She's like, I don't know the answers to everything, but I know what Jesus has done for me. And if you want to be a witness, first you have to start with, what has Jesus done for you? What is your story? Who is Jesus to you? You need to be able to answer that question. And then don't worry about the rest. If somebody asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, just say, wow, that is a really great question. Let me do some research about it. Do you want to meet later for coffee? You don't have to know all the answers. Nobody knows all the answers. You don't become a Christian because you have the answer to everything. You don't. Our job is just to tear down false obstacles. We answer objections when we have the answer to them and recognize that sometimes you're not going to have the answer to it. You just aren't. And it's not about you and the person. It's the Holy Spirit that saves. It's the Holy Spirit that draws us to God, right? It's the Holy Spirit's job to save and to sanctify us. Again, you are to be the product demonstration. You're not the savior. Just be willing to have conversations with people. So anyway, beyond that, I just have to say that when you read things on David's site, again, I think he is an amazing teacher. I feel really blessed that I had him as a Bible study teacher, because most people haven't had a Bible study teacher like him. It's really amazing. And as I was going through all his posts and reading things, I was like, wow, I mean, I can see, I didn't realize it literally until I was putting that page together, but there are certain people that have had a big influence on how I think, how I see faith. But I think David probably has had the biggest influence on how I write my Bible studies. I mean, I think if you read his stuff and read mine, you can see the influence and the style. So anyway, he had not only a huge influence about like how I study the Bible, how I read it, but also how I write. I will say that when you read through his stuff, I don't agree with everything, all of his positions. He is, this thing, I've never had a conversation with him about this because I really didn't understand the distinction of Arminianism and Calvinism when I was in the class with him, but I think he believes in eternal security. I don't. I'm a no-point Calvinist. I don't believe in it at all. His position is as a pre-trib rapture. I'm probably more of a midpoint now. But this is the thing. We don't have to agree on everything. We can have different positions on things. It doesn't change reality. Like if I think a certain thing about Bible prophecy or what's going to happen, it doesn't change what actually is going to happen. I could be right, I could be wrong. It doesn't change reality, but we can disagree on things. So I don't agree with every position that he has, but it's really interesting to me that we've written about a lot of the same things. And I have read some of his stuff, but I haven't followed it week by week, so I hadn't realized that literally until this week. But he has a post on The Walking Dead Among Us, and I did that live stream about a month or so ago about the zombies among us. There's just a lot of parallels to the things that we write about. We also have both of us have a tendency to just like title things kind of like what we want to title them, rather not necessarily about what somebody would be searching for. Like he titled that "What Happens Next." You know, he titles it as a writer, not as somebody that is trying to attract search. So anyway, he's an amazing teacher. He's an amazing writer. After he left Second, and he started his blog, but he was also working, I can't remember the name of I think it was Global Outreach Ministries or something. They would have questions come in, and so he kind of worked as an online ministry. He also mentored pastors in third world countries that didn't have seminary training or whatever. So he's mentored them, and he's just done a lot to really further the kingdom. So anyway, how to survive the rapture. Here's the thing. I was taking a screenshot of this and I forgot about it. But if you go to his About page and scroll down to the comments, there was somebody that posted just in the last week really concerned about having all the details right about the feast of the Lord and the timing and like what specific day, like what time zone is it going to be in. And David basically said, God's got it covered, and somebody's salvation and being included in the rapture is not dependent on whether or not they understand it clearly. And that was one of the things that he said whenever he taught a class on the end times, is God is in complete control. We put our trust in God, right? We put our trust in Jesus as our Savior, and that's all we need to worry about. I mean, timing, whatever, it's kind of irrelevant, because you should be doing what you should be doing regardless of when the rapture comes, right? So just live your life like you're going to face Jesus tomorrow, so that you have something to say to him. This is what you gave me with my life, and this is what I did with it. That's just my overview. How to survive the rapture. Just trust in Jesus. He's literally got it covered. And dates and all of that, I mean, it's not irrelevant, but it doesn't change our instructions, right? So we should be living like today is our last day. Always. We should always be ready to stand before God. So anyway, that's my overview. I hope you'll go and visit David's site, and also you can use the site on my page, David Bauer's Guide to the End Times, as a resource to get to those pages and find them, so you know what he has available. But if you find something that is useful to you, then please share it, because as I've shown, just this is only a very slight amount of the sabotage that I documented. His site's being targeted. I've done what I can to be able to get it back in the search, but my site's being targeted too, and eventually it might filter down to his. So please use it as a resource if that's something that you're interested in. And also, if you do find it useful, please share it. This is something you can do something specifically about, because if you share his stuff, you're defeating that sabotage. So anyway, I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next time.